The first rule in grip sport is you tell everyone about grip sport.
Crushing, pinch grip, thick bar, wrists.
If the best guy in the world can't lift 100 pounds on it, I don't give a shit about it.
So, got the grip show back up and rolling. I have Jenn Tibbenham here and Eric Roussin that you guys have seen before a few times. But they both were competing at the Arnold Classic for the Armlifting USA event, and I wasn't there myself, but I wanted to give them a chance to kind of give us a rundown on everything that happened there and just kind of their experience as they lifted through the different classes and got to see the other weight classes lift and stuff like that. So, welcome to the show, guys. And if there's anything you kind of want to start off with just about that experience, feel free.
Well, maybe I'll start off. So this was the fourth arm lifting event at the Arnolds. I've been fortunate to go to all four. The 2019, which was the first one, and then the last 3 years. And every year, it's been a little different, both in terms of location and how it was run. This year, the main difference was the amount of stage time we received on like big stages, and that was fantastic. It wasn't just like 20 minutes; it was a few hours. Jenn, I know you've been to a couple of Arnolds. What were your feelings?
Really good. So this is my third Arnold's for the third different sport. So 2015 was strong woman. So that was like my big woo, and then kind of representing England from that side of it. And then 2020, we kind of did the coronavirus. I would say that's when I first met Sarah with the Rogue Record Breakers. So that felt weird. It was almost like competing at your high school. But no, this year, really good. Just hell, I never thought I would be back, depending on with kids, but I'm still making it happen and shuffling it. But I totally agree. Just it really well run up on the stage, because you always think, are you going to be one of those minor sports that's, I don't know, because one year, like in 2015, there was the pole dancing in a random section. So yeah, no, definitely, I agree with your summation right there.
I think what happened is the Arnold really reduced the number of sports this year. I think they cut about a third of the sports. So there's no arm wrestling this year. There was many sports that were there in previous years were not there. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that we were able to get so much stage time. And I know that it helps the way our sport is done. We do have flexibility. So Ricardo was basically agreeing to anything that they want to do in terms of schedule adjustments. And I know there were schedule adjustments right to the last minute. But that's probably one of the reasons why the Arnolds like to deal with Armlifting USA. And because, I was thrilled to be on the stage. I think all of the women's concert, all of the Saxon and Axel for both the pro men's classes from 90 kg and up, and on all of the women's pro classes, whereas either on the main stage or the Rogue strength stage, which they were both approximately the same stage, and in my opinion, both approximately had the same amount of volume of people walking by. I don't know if it was in the hundreds, possibly the thousands. It's hard to tell, but it was excellent exposure for the sport. So it was something special.
Okay, with that being said, now, do you think that based on how it went this year, just kind of from what you were seeing with the crowd, the reception from everybody, how all the lifters performed and stuff, would you assume that with maybe the success of how it went, or how it sounds like it went pretty well, that next year it might even be even bigger, or that'll just be another repeat where you'll still get that same main stage time and stuff like that?
It's hard for me to say, but I know I actually roomed with Ricardo over the weekend. So the feedback he was getting from the Arnold was they were very, very satisfied with everything. So I'm hoping it'll be at least as much. I mean, if we get the whole contest on a major stage, that would be even better. Because that was one of the challenges, is that for most of the class, except for the lighter men and the open category on the Sunday, we had to move venue. So we did the stage, and then we had to go to the little room to finish off the medley. For the women, it was like right after, but for the men, for the women and I guess the heavyweight men, was soon after. But for my class, the 90 kg and the 110, there was about a 5-hour break between the Saxon and the medley. So not ideal, but we're all in the same boat. We're all dealing with the same circumstances. So it is what it is. I'm completely fine with anything as long if we get that type of stage time and we keep getting invited to the Arnolds. I'll roll with it.
Okay.
Absolutely. Or even the live link. Like I had my colleagues from work like chiming in that they stayed up late. And then I tried to even text like our little WhatsApp group to say, oh, we're a little bit later. So I think even from the international point of view, to get people that are not lifters to try to get excited and watch. It would be interesting to even see the numbers from the live stream. So even I had my friends on the East Coast of the US saying, yes, we're watching, taking pictures. So it would be interesting to factor that in of how much time that even got streamed. But it's just nice that instead of relying on pictures for video right then and there, me saying, hell yeah, from a 5-hour time difference to kind of get the real feel of what Jen's like when she competes versus being in the office. So I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I think there was one day I tried to check out the link and I couldn't get it to work, but it seemed like the day or two prior I had seen so many people that were like posting recordings of the live streams and stuff like that, and it looked pretty cool. So I was kind of excited for that, but I think it was probably something I was doing on my end that I couldn't get it to work. I think it was on Saturday. I went to whatever the page was and it had like the world's strongest firefighter type competition. It had like all these 6 or 7 different things. And I'm like, I didn't see anything for the arm lifting on that particular day or for that time slot, because I was wanting to see I think it was like the 90s, 100s and the 110 kilos for the men. And I don't know if they had a stream running up for that as
I'm
well.
not sure. I'm not sure.
But I kind of had trouble finding it, but that could totally be just me. But I think that, yeah, getting it live streamed, main stage and stuff like that's probably definitely a good step in the right direction. And if everybody in the crowd and whoever else is hosting it and stuff like that is on board, then seems like a win-win, for everybody. So
absolutely.
And I would say, like I said, from afar, looking at some of these weight classes and looking at the rosters, looks like probably one of the deepest divisions. In general, they're just the deepest pool of people. It seems like there was a good turnout. It didn't seem like there was really any weight classes, because it happens sometimes, you show up and maybe, oh man, there's only 3 people in a certain weight class or something. But for this, it really seemed like, from what I'm seeing, there's a lot of household names, people I know, people that I didn't expect to compete that were there and competing. So it seems like the talent pool was pretty good. How did you guys feel about that as far as just the turnout from the lifters?
I thought there was, I don't know what the percentage was, but there was, I think, 113 different lifters who showed up this weekend across all days, which was, I think last year was maybe 80 or something. So it's increased every year, both in competitors and in depths. Now, some classes were comparable in difficulty, but on average, I would say they were harder this year. Mm-hmm. Not because some of this, super heavyweight men, we didn't have Kim Johansson this year. There's a few, we didn't have the Swedish team or a lot of the Swedish team. But overall, some of these classes have never been as tough. We'll get through them. But the women's 80 kg, that was a very stacked class. So that was a lot of fun to watch.
Well, that's what I'm looking at here. I have, there was 10 women in that class alone.
Yeah.
And then there was another 7 in the 80 plus category. So it's usually, you know what I mean? I feel like in the past, it's been one of those things where it's kind of maybe there's 3 or 4 or right. two or three women in a class, but to actually fill a class out to double digits across multiple classes and stuff, I think that's I don't know, just stands out to me from past competitions. So,
yeah.
Or it's just more women. That's the other thing that it's just nice to see. And that's where it's just, we're getting the sport to grow.
Right.
And that's where even Nemesis Grips, that's their kind of ethos right now, is getting more women to lift, trying to use the more health angle. Why not? And I think it's trying to say, well, for myself being an ex-strong woman, it's just, what do you turn to now that you have a family, or maybe that direction of still keep lifting, keep active, but a strong woman, I feel like it takes over your life. So I think it's just that outlet to keep going versus just, yeah, go big, go home, or you're too broken, you can't take care of your family. From all the sports and the training and what have you. So it's just nice to see. And even Tammy McClure stepping up of, to go into the 80 kilos class. That was her choice. And she gave herself a competition this weekend, or that weekend.
Yeah, I saw she was like right on the line. She was like 154, 155, and it's like, oh man, it's like half a pound, or like, it's like there's no cut. You could literally do either class you wanted. So yeah, it was I was kind of seeing some of that stuff beforehand. But
yeah, Ricardo even said, like, are you sure you want to do this? And Tammy was just like, yes, I want to do it. And that's my buddy. That's what she wants to do. Like, no stopping her whatsoever.
Anything before we start to, I guess, kind of break down the different classes and stuff like that? I don't know, anything else to mention or anything that stood out to you guys about the competition?
I mean, I'm looking forward to going back.
Yeah.
But I'm good. I'm good to start going through the list.
Okay. Like I said, if you guys want, I just start off with some women's divisions. And if I go down the sheet I'm looking at might be different than what you guys have or whatever, but we'll try to just, I guess, work through it the best we can here. But if we have the women's masters, and I don't want to butcher any names or anything like that, but I believe Jade Dickens won the women's masters. And are either of you two familiar with her as a lifter?
So I spoke to her because I was helping set up the first day. So background in powerlifting, also an organizer, trying to get interested in doing some of the super series this summer. So I just think that there's the enthusiasm there that to care of somebody to come to the Arnolds and say yes to keep promoting grip. It's another place in Texas.
Right.
And then if I look at the other stuff,
okay,
well, yeah.
Just as strong and also ex-prison. So just ex-prison officer. I just think from that background, that occupation, you need to have a little bit of power.
Yeah.
So if she uses, lifting in an outlet, absolutely. She's my kind of gal. I want on my side.
And really between the top three, it looks like, so I guess you could say the podium for that, not a real big point spread. Like out of 300 total points, you have like a 293, 289, so 4 points separating there. And then a little bit of a drop off down to third to 277, but still out of a 300 point scoring system, that's pretty competitive. So, I mean, it wasn't like one person just showed up and it was kind of like a give me or anything, it's like just earned and pretty much good work there. Is there anything you guys can recall from watching that like flight of lifters go?
Well, one thing that Joanna Hull, who finished second,
okay,
I believe she's the mother of Vince Broderick, who competed on the Sunday contest. Vince lives in New Hampshire. They both live in New Hampshire. Vince came up to my King Kong venue last year. And I think she was debating whether she should compete at all. She has been training, but I think she was more here to support Vince. And in the end, Ricardo convinced her, no, you should be competing. And she had a great day. I mean, she finished second, close second. So I'm really happy that she decided to lift.
Yeah, and it looks like she won the axle.
The axle, yeah.
Took an event win. Oh, actually, and it looks like she won 2 out of 3 events, right?
Yeah, the medley, yeah.
So it really just looks like maybe it was just probably, maybe not enough time on a Saxon bar, or maybe that being kind of the deciding factor there. But
right.
But yeah, no, definitely good performance. Let's see, moving on.
Just Saxon, I feel like, is difficult for females' hands in general. That's where that you have to start a long distance, or not a long distance, but I would say a long committed relationship with the Saxon bar.
Yeah, and Jen, just from your personal preference, do you think that you would rather, and this might be like a hand size type thing, would you rather be on a 2-inch Saxon than the 3-inch, or?
Yes, and that's
probably
exactly what she said.
Yeah.
A shorter Saxon, just to it just feels better to me.
Yeah, I think the 3-inch gets a little wide for for some guys, depending on hand size. Most with about average or above average hands. For the men, really, I don't think complain too much about it. But smaller hand sizes, it kind of becomes a wider pinch type thing. And then especially for a lot of the women's lifters, I think, yeah, the 3 inches probably on the wider, on the wider side that really, I don't know, if you were to throw like a 2.5 or a 2 inch bar in their hands, you probably see a pretty good increase because you'd kind of get into that sweet spot for the like optimal hand position for a lot of the women's lifters. So I think that, in which there was a 2 inch at the Olympia not too long ago. So, I mean, it's not to say that it couldn't get thrown in at some point, but yeah, that's a good point. I think if, like you said, if you're not training regularly on the 3 inch Saxon and getting used to that width and kind of the texture of everything and technique, Saxon can be a tough one, especially if you're already at a disadvantage with hand size and stuff like that. Moving on, let's say we dive into 60 kg. And I don't know. Like I said, we can break this down however, and I don't know if you guys have any of the results in front of you, but Grace Van Hoy.
Grace she's a, perennial champ in this class. The last, definitely the last Arnold's, probably the last Worlds at 60 kg. She's always, either she wins. I think she's won them all. I can't recall for sure, but she always does very well. The new person that I didn't know was the person who took second, Taylor Kraus. And if you look at the score, she came close. And she was fun to watch just because she dresses a little flashy, and she was an entertaining lifter, I find, just from her look. I thought that was fun for the crowd as well. But she tied on the Saxon and wasn't too far behind on the other 2 events. So she had a good day.
Then let me see. And then rounding out the rest of that would be Lynn Sears, Melody Schoenfeld, and Vicky Spencer.
Did you see how close the score between Lynn and Melody is?
Yeah. Yeah. I see it now. Yeah. Like 0.06, like not even, not even close to a point. Yeah. Fractions of a fraction. Right. So yeah, no, like I said, that's always good when you look at these things and you at least have people that are, close to your level to where it's competitive, whether that be a battle for second and third or fourth, whatever the case may be. I just think that, because in grip, like we know, sometimes people run away with a certain weight class. There's a clean sweep and you can't really do anything about it, but you just don't want to see like everybody getting swept all the way down the list where it was like, man, that class was decided before we ever walked out there. You kind of like those moments where you're like, man, I don't know what's going to happen, And I think that judging by some of these scores, it's kind of how it looks for certain things. 1 or 2 reps, 5 pounds or so could really kind of shift the outcome. So then we move into 70 kg. And this is probably, I mean, like this had the least amount of people in it, based on what I'm reading from the women's stuff. And like I said, and Tammy would have been in the 70 kg had she decided to cut, but like you said, she went up to 80.
That makes me wonder if that's one of the reasons so few people entered that class, under the expectation that Tammy would be in that class. Maybe, you never know.
Yeah, that's true.
But Ashley Sterling, I think this was her first comp I think she attended like an arm lifting clinic that Ricardo put on like very recently in Virginia. And she's tall and like tall and skinny. Boy, I don't know if she's 6 feet tall, but she was strong. Like she won all 3 events pretty convincingly. So it's always surprising to me when I see somebody that I've never seen before in this sport and who wins their class. It's impressive.
Kind of built like a tennis player or volleyball player. And she followed Tammy and I and introduced herself. And I was like, yeah, and then recognized the name a little bit and took some pictures. But no, like you said, first time comp, she just nailed it.
Yeah.
And then let's say you guys want to bump up to the 80 kg class, which looks like it was the size-wise the biggest class with 10 people total.
So I think Tammy obviously did this for a bigger challenge for herself, but I don't think it was expected. So I'm sort of be curious to see what a lot of the people in the class felt when they saw Tammy sort of jump up a class. That's the thing with weight classes, that I feel you can't, if somebody is able to make a weight, whether they go up or down, weight classes are designed to protect the lighter people. If she's strong enough to compete against the bigger people, that's not, to me, that's fair game. It's not, so while it may have been a surprise, I think it was great from a fan to watch her compete at that class.
So Tammy took first place for the women's 80 kg, and she almost had a perfect score. Was it the medley? Gave up a couple points just on some reps, but and that was Danielle Evanson taking second place, which
correct. And I hadn't seen her really lift in an arm lifting competition in a long time. I know she crossed over to an arm wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of surprising to see her kind of jump back in to the woodwork. So that's where I just thought, wow, this will be interesting.
She was impressive.
She's strong.
Yeah. She's super strong. And in that medley, man, she was dialed in. It looked like she could have kept going had she not run out of time. She was really nailing the form of that medley.
And then if we round out the podium, third place, Alicia Martin. And that was a fairly close battle between her and Haley Gow.
Right.
Separated by about 6 or 7 points or so there. So
Alicia Martin and Rachel Peterson, they're from also first-time real comp. Ricardo went recently, I think, to Washington for an arm lifting clinic, or Seattle. And they were exposed to the sport, and he convinced them to come because they were very strong. He recognized that. And man, I think Jenn, I think they have strong women backgrounds, I think, or at least
correct. And correct. And that's where Alicia was helping the next day, helping with the fire strongman. So this is where a lady that just likes to keep on going, help out, and like you say, a strong woman background. I just friended her on Instagram, and that's where I could see that, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, good for her to keep on going that weekend, getting involved.
But all of the names that, like Haley, Christina, Michelle, Sarah, they're all people who are consistent, strong performers. So it just so happens that when the class is this deep, someone's going to finish near the bottom. But this was a strong group, a very strong group.
And then I kind of feel similar as we go up to the 80 kg plus class. I feel like, there's not a name that I don't recognize really. You recognize all the names, and then you just got to see how everybody kind of, shuffles and plays out through the different lifts. Was there anything about that weight class? And Jenn, we'll let you kind of talk on this one a little bit because this is the class you competed in. So you can kind of give us the insight on what that was like.
Absolutely. So, of course, Sarah being there, and I knew she was going to rock the medley from even the Mr. Olympia this year. Mm-hmm. Amy, I'm so damn glad that Amy's back in the mix of it. Just great stuff. And that's the thing. I introduced myself to Amy summer 2022 when I said, hey, can I use your venue for the Grip Super Series in Boise, Idaho? More Meridian. It's just outside. She said, yeah, no problem. And then I gave her a Greek arm lifting discus. So that's how I introduced myself and got to know her. And so she was she was like, oh, it's kind of inspired me to do a little bit. And of course, her and Tammy, I think they live like a half hour away. They've been swapping implements back and forth. So I'm just really glad that I'm bringing kind of the old school people back of getting in there. But yeah, just it. And then seeing Hannah again, that was really, really good. Melissa, but of course they're local to Ohio. So again, the similar faces, Kathy, and again, my kind of roommate during the Arnolds this year. And then Claire, apparently she is a former power lifter. So this weekend, absolutely, she wasn't scared whatsoever, used to it, kind of got into her powerlifting like zen. She had the breathing going on just from powerlifting, very smooth and not afraid of this competition whatsoever. from my perspective. So everything, just axle felt a little bit different. Just that rogue, the knurling was kind of biting into my left hand a little bit. Just, it didn't seem like a strongman kind of axle bar. So I think that's where the rogue is almost like a viper of a bar, that it will bite at certain parts of your hand within it, either kind of where the tissue is into it. And then Saxon was a PB. I was happy with that 59, because in Sweden, when I went to Mortal Grip Wars, it just 55 wasn't coming up. So this time around, I was just practicing a little bit more often at a lighter weight. And so very happy when I came in through the Saxon bar. And then when we did the medley, got off stage, go into the other room, then Ricardo picked out the points. I was seated in fourth. And this is where I thought, you need to dig deep in order to try to get myself in a podium position. So from that, I just thought, you need to scream out one of your son's names in the middle of your medley to try to dig deep. I said, you need to get emotional. And I did get emotional, just because I thought, with the reps that were going on, especially as you see with Hannah, 8 reps. And I was like, no, I need to get into this. So I think it was about rep 12 that I screamed out Owen's name. And I don't have that on video, unfortunately. And I told him this. And I think I squeaked out 3 more reps, but then Chad did not get the 15th rep for whatever reason. He did not qualify it. And then when Amy went, just it was surprising that she stopped at 10. I was absolutely just like flabbergasted, like, what? That this woman, just being from a strong woman background, just couldn't do anymore. And then, after we got her medal, Sarah, of course, rocked it, kept on going like a pendulum or like at an oil rig, just kept on going. I knew that was going to happen, of course. And afterwards, when we got our medals, just Amy was like, Jen, you beat me. And I just thought, I know. I couldn't believe it either, just because I thought I was absolutely going to get mopped from her background. So this is what you need to do, get emotional. That Zach, when you're ever in that point that you almost think it's like Superman in a comic book, that you're trying to, lift that car for that man that's stuck underneath it, that you just have to get emotional. And that's exactly what I did. You get emotional because you want to do something outrageous, and that it was very stiff competition. And of course, me, if there's a crowd, I will give people a goddamn good show.
Yeah. No, I'd say that's one of the like I said, without everybody like always getting introduced to, like I said, a lot of grip people at first it's kind of online and remote until you get to meet in these competitions and stuff like that. But yeah, that's always been, I think, kind of one of the lead-ins. If anybody ever talks about you, is kind of like, oh man, she gets hyped up, or oh, she puts on a show when she lifts. You know what I mean? So that's something before like any of us had met, or before I got to meet people and stuff like that, that it was known that, like I said, that you kind of were an emotional lifter and that you would kind of put on a show and stuff like that. So
thanks.
No surprise there. But yeah, that, and like I said, with that podium, that would make Sarah Chapelo, which I think did she win the Arnold last year, or was last year when Gabby Dixon?
No, she second to Gabby left.
Okay. I was just double checking on that. But so Sarah returns back to first there with Amy Waddles in second, and then Jenn with us here in third place for that podium, just to round out that podium there. But yeah, no, like I said, another stacked class for women's divisions, and good to see, like I said, the numbers kind of bumping up. And I'm sure aside from I'd have to go in and do more research, but I would say not only are the like roster spots like climbing, I would assume that a lot of people's personal bests and their lifts are actually increasing as well. So not only are there more women lifting, but I'm sure across the board, the numbers are going up as well as to like, what's a good axle, what's a good Saxon. I'm sure people are not coming in and lifting the same things 3 years in a row,
Right.
So I'd have to investigate more to prove that statement, but I'm just assuming that along with the extra participation, the talent's still climbing too, just as far as, what numbers are good and what numbers are acceptable and what it's going to take to place. I think that just keeps the standard just kind of keeps rising each year.
Yeah.
And then not
If
to
we,
mention Sarah Rodwell, she came from Australia, correct?
yeah,
Yes.
yep.
Yeah, so I mean that's where again getting the people, it's not people just settling up to say, oh, Arnold's Australia. So 30 hours on a flight, I mean, that puts mine to shame when I flew to, New York and then get to Columbus. But I know people are saying, well, why don't you represent England? But to me, in my mind, I'll never have the accent to match it. And then I don't want to become like an imposter or fraud. So no, definitely. That's where I'll represent USA. But if it's the Olympics and somebody's willing to pay my way, all the flags are red, white, and blue. But until that time, that I'm definitely a red-blooded American.
Is that probably, I mean, I know Luke Reynolds also competed from Australia. Was it just those two that came from Australia for this? Or was there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if there was anybody else, but I know we typically get like a Finland or Sweden, one of the two, kind of will pop over. Obviously, Canada usually is represented really well in this competition. I'm sure, just some, I don't know. Are there any other countries maybe I'm leaving out that are kind of like consistently always having people show up? But because I know Luke had competed before, but this would be Sarah's first time probably coming over to compete for it. But I've seen a lot of her training videos and stuff like that, kind of getting ready for it. But like I said, yeah, people just, I guess it's showing how far people are actually traveling and, the best of the best to kind of, kind of see where they stand. So that's a good thing too, that people are just making farther trips to test themselves. But yeah, I wasn't sure if there's anybody else from Australia. I guess those two probably. And then, like I said, is there any other countries that I'm like leaving out there that maybe were represented?
Israel. That was
Okay.
kind of that was interesting.
Yeah, there's
Just-
one guy from Israel. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, there's Alexei Tukalov from Russia. There may have been one other country, but for one person, but I can't recall offhand.
And then
Yeah.
Simon came from
Oh,
Denmark.
Denmark. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's similar to you. He grew up in the States and has been
Like
in
out
Denmark
west,
for the
right?
past 20 years.
Didn't he grow up like out west or something?
No, so
Yeah.
he's from Minnesota. He went to
Okay.
the University of Idaho to throw, who,
Okay.
again, small world.
That's what it
He
was. Yeah.
was, so he was he was a roommate to a discus thrower I threw with in high school.
Oh, wow.
So this is where this is what us throwers do. Are like, oh, what are we going to do with our lives? We're not going to just spin it in a in a ring anymore. That we're going to go to the weight room and still do something else, make something of ourselves. So that we've done.
So, like I said, I'll just start with kind of the same format, just running through the Masters divisions here. And Eric, is Adam Cohen from Canada?
No, I think Minnesota.
Okay, so still up north. Maybe for some reason I thought he was a Canadian lifter. But very, very impressive. Not just Masters lifter, just an impressive lifter in general. But
Absolutely. I think this is the first time that I've seen him live compete.
Mhm.
And he could have easily entered the 100 kg and been right in the thick of it on the next day. He was he impressed me. Like his axle 185 at a body weight of about 210 pounds. I mean, that is very good. Very good.
Yeah. Yep. And he had a clean sweep there in that class. So it looks like he took all three events. So if I was to break down, because they have this by, let me see. Oh man, I don't want to mess it up. It looks like they split the men's masters by maybe like two separate weight classes.
Yeah, 110 and below and 110 plus.
Okay, so we kind of had like a weight division, where it split there.
Yeah.
But for the top class would have been Adam Cohen taking the win, like we just mentioned. And then after that, Tony King, Ricardo Magni, and John Catalinas. So, and hopefully I'm saying John's last name right there. I'm not 100% on that, but that would be that section, which they're, I guess, under 110. And then everybody else would be over 110 kilos for the for the next class up for the men's masters. So
Yeah.
sorry, I almost skipped over that. Like I'm looking at the men's masters and I didn't realize that they had split it into two as I'm looking at it now. So I kind of just realized that on spot. But yeah,
And Rocky Malfors, who was the lightest of the heavies, just weighing 1.5 kilos over, and he won the whole thing. So he's from Florida. You may have met him. He was at the Olympia. He won the Olympia, actually.
Yeah. I remember him being at the Olympia, and he lifted really well there too.
Yeah.
So that's where I don't know that I spoke to him or that we really talked a lot at all, but I definitely took notice of the name and got to watch him lift that weekend. So I was familiar when I saw him win, and
right.
I guess have another good performance at the Arnold like he did at the Olympia. So yeah, interesting to see. And that would be, Eric, do you want to try to name the podium there for the men's masters 110 and over?
Yeah, well, Scott Fike, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce his name.
Okay.
And then William, I'm going to guess Fatiger, I'm really not sure.
That was the one I was afraid of. I didn't know about that one. That's why I'll toss it off to you. But yeah, and then I feel like I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of these names that like for some reason I feel like I've seen them, heard them, but like I almost just can't picture the face with some of the lifters. And but for the most part, pretty competitive class right there. And then, like I said, I guess if we dive out of masters, we could get into men's 70 and men's 80. Let's see.
And the masters and the lightweight men are the only groups that didn't get any stage time. So I felt a little, they were unlucky, I guess, because I would have been a little disappointed to do the whole thing in the living room. But I guess it is what it is. You still get to enjoy the Arnold experience and walk the expo and everything. But I just feel that they sort of got, I guess, unlucky with the scheduling. But it is what it is.
Yeah, they just have to pull a Tammy and just go up a couple weight classes.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I know you weighed 154 pounds, but you get to go lift against Alexei Tukalov. No, I'm just like, I'm being unrealistic a little bit, but yeah. But no, yeah, it'd be nice if everybody could get, I guess, the same stage time. And I'm sure like with an event that big, there's only so many slots and they got to kind of maneuver it around. And it probably took everything they had just to get the classes that did get stage time to do it. So, maybe next year with different timing and different stuff, maybe some of these people that were in these classes will get that shot or will get that experience, I guess. So if we go into the 70 class, we're looking at, I don't want to mess it up here. Steve Gaspar.
I think it's Gaspar. Yeah.
Okay.
California. He's only been in the sport. He's still his first year, and he was strong. I mean, he won all 3 events and got 31 reps in the 3rd pin. I can't remember what that pin was loaded with, but that's a great number.
And then Jay Ripley took 2nd place, and then Matt Salfeld took 3rd place there.
Right.
So that would be the podium for the 70 kg men. Is there anything that I don't know, like anything you guys noticed or anything about those lifts that stand out or anything you see that's like notable before we move on to 80?
Not offhand for me.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I just, like I said, not being there, I don't know if you're like, oh man, there was this one crazy moment. I don't know. So I'm always just kind of, asking. I would say going to the men's 80. Now this is intel I got, I believe from you, Eric, but Devin Lee Brown won the 80 kg class. And now Devin Lee Brown has been known to compete typically in the 90 kg class, but I guess he had cut some weight for an arm wrestling competition or something.
He told me he recently pulled at the 80 kg class for 1 or 2 arm wrestling events recently. So I figured why not stay there and with the hope of setting records that may stay there for a while. Tammy went up, he went down, and he surprised that group. I know they surprised that group because I don't think Ben was expecting Devin Lee, but it made for, this was another really stacked class. You look at the names in this class. It's a strong class.
Well, I was going to say, anytime, this is just one of my thoughts, but like Mike Rogowski's pretty much a long time, grip sport, arm lifting competitor, and does a lot of other stuff as well. But for those lighter weight classes, typically not having as many people in them in the past,
Right.
Typically you kind of would know everybody on the podium, or you'd know the first couple, and then you wouldn't even know who was on the other. But when Mike Rogowski doesn't make the top 3, that class is pretty tough because Mike is super strong. So that was something I first took notice of. I was like, man, obviously Devin Lee Brown's down a weight class, which is a problem for anybody. I mean, anybody 90, 100, whatever. I mean, it's tough to lift against him. And like I said, then you see somebody like Mike Rogowski, who's kind of one of the top dogs down there, and he's not even on the podium for, the first top 3. It just, like I said, goes to show the depth of that class for this. So yeah, definitely. Okay, well, yeah.
Just seeing Ben on Instagram, he's constantly lifting these huge weights, doing this really impressive. So I was really looking forward to watching this class. And he was close. He kept it competitive throughout the contest. With Devin Lee's hands, these events are really great for his strength. Like, he has 9-inch hands. So we know he's gonna have a good axle. We know from the Olympia that his grandfather clock is on a completely different level. So I mean, I knew going in that he was the heavy favorite. But Ben put up a good fight.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I said, like you said, knowing that with the grandfather clock, the V-bar, knowing how much he lifted at the Olympia, and then saying, oh, well, now we have a medley of that, where you're just going to smash out reps for, sub-maximal weight. I don't want to say that event lineup was almost like selected for him to win, but like you said, he's definitely kind of the favored person going into that, I would say. But it doesn't look like Ben was very far off, other than really looks like the Saxon was like the real big gap.
Right.
Like, there were still some gaps, 5 kilos here on the axle, which isn't crazy, and then a couple reps or whatever on the medley, but 17, if I'm looking at it right, 17 kilos is a pretty big amount.
Yeah.
On something like that. So I think that's really where the biggest gap was made, even though Devin Lee took the win in all events and got the 300. It looks like the Saxon was definitely, I mean, like, had been squeaked out one of the other events, I think the gap in the Saxon would have just still kept him, like, basically kept Devin Lee untouchable, probably.
Right. And then Samuel, I don't know if I'm going to guess Poiri, but so he's from Finland. He's only 21.
Real young, right? Yeah,
really young. Yeah. He's consistently places top 5 in King Kong the last couple of years. So I knew he was going to be good, but he was impressive. Like, he earned that third place spot on the podium. Good to see him, and he got 25 reps, almost as many as Devin on the grandfather clock.
Does he, just as a little bit off subject, but does he lift with Arto at all?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I saw him like lifting at like the same gym or the same setup that Arto has, or if it was maybe somebody else in Finland that he was lifting with. But I've definitely seen some of his videos. And that was a name I wasn't expecting to see pop up. But like I said, I watch him lift online sometimes. So when I saw the name on the sheet, I'm like, oh man, pretty cool that he made the trip. But yeah, another pretty deep division. Like I said, 9 people there for. Same thing with like the women's classes, but even like the men's, the lighter weight classes, that's been a problem in the past, is just kind of a lack of depth. But when you see this, the 70 and 80, not 70, the 80 kg class, almost to double digits just for a single class is pretty significant. So yeah, we can move on from there if you guys want. And Jenn, anything that you noticed from some of these, I guess like from the 70 to 80, and now we're about to jump into the 90. Were you running around the expo doing other stuff, or were you still sitting in the arm lifting area checking it out? Or
so myself, I was a little bit selfish this day because I thought I'm competing. I get a little bit of too much auditory from having the big expo stuff. I just thought I wanted to chill out. And the other thing is, Amy and I met up for breakfast. So, you know what it's like, us thrower type people. We got to have a big meal in for the day. Kind of is set up things. And not to mention it, just us girls, we kind of had a bad Airbnb experience. So then Amy got us to a Holiday Inn, so that's where we settled in. Poor Tammy only got like 30 minutes of sleep. It's the pros and cons of choices when you make your logistics. That I know Tammy sometimes likes to fly out late, and 30 minutes. Just sometimes that was my only horrific, I would say, just a bad Airbnb. But that's the thing. Out of the last few years, the craps, the house was against me, that it was gonna happen. So no, I would, like I said, a little bit selfish and some logistic issues that morning. But I would like to say that Steve Gaspar was really good. He watched all the other classes, even for the females. So it's nice to see for the other part that they were cheering the gals on as well. So no, good guy. And then Devin Lee, I remember seeing him when I helped out the first day, that Ricardo was like, I'm not weighing in yet. And so then Devin, bless his heart, probably had to go around to kind of keep his mind off until he could have another from of food.
And going to 90 kg, which would be 198 pounds. This is interesting because we can say Nicholas Mans or just Nick Mans. I don't know if he goes by Nick for short. But he's lifted pretty well the last few, whether it's Arnold's or Olympias. But I just wanted to point this out. Like I said, I don't know him personally or anything other than maybe the couple minutes we've talked at some competitions. But he's had to lift against some very tough people the last 3 or 4 years, or probably 2 or 3 maybe. But it was nice to see him pick up the win at 90. Now we could debate, oh, well, that's because people moved classes. Well, you can't control that. You know what I mean? What people lift at's what they lift at. But I just know competing and lifting against Nick in the past, whether it be like going against like the Devin Lee Browns or Eric, I don't know if he competed the year that me and you both did 90. I'm not sure. So. But then I know he's out at like the what do you call it? The Olympia, like when I think it was in Vegas, and he's lifting against Ian Wheat, who was really tough that year. So I was gonna say shout out to Nick Mans for sticking with it through all these just different tough weight classes and tough people that he's had to kind of go against to go ahead and seal the deal and get first place against the lineup this year. Right. So just like I said, I've seen him take, third or fourth place so many times in all these big competitions, like right there, just below the people. So it was nice to kind of see, him not being discouraged by that or not make excuses, and then just, show up and perform and pull really big lifts that were above what he's pulled in the past. So right. Good deal there. To round out the rest of the 90 class would be Carl Wesley, Jake Monroe, and Brandon Collins. And yeah, that class points wise was a little bit scattered everywhere.
This was what was interesting in this class. So Carl Wesley is the guy who showed up late at the Olympia. Yes. I don't know if you remember.
Yep,
he had to jump in the Saxon, and by that time the Saxon he jumped in, the weight was so high, so he actually failed his first to get a lift at the Olympia on his first event. He after the Axel and Saxon, he was in 4th place. And then he dug deep and he crushed the grandfather clock. If you look, he's the only, no one else got more than 1 rep on the 3rd pin, and he got 7. So that was really cool to see. He climbed from 4th to 2nd place. So I really thought that was an exciting part for that class. That was really cool.
And that really kind of shows how, I guess, like the medley kind of factors in sometimes, there's so many different aspects to grip that depending on any lineup, I don't want to say anyone can beat anybody, but really when you start to shuffle the different events and the format of them, especially with like a medley where you have reps that can kind of keep going, the placement when you're lifting, it's not really over till it's over. I mean, somebody like we've seen some of these numbers. I mean, someone could do 1 rep on the third pin. Someone might do 31 reps on the third pin. Like that's going to
Right.
like just drastically shake things up. So, that's been kind of interesting to see that format the last 2 times it's been ran with the different medleys and stuff, because we've seen people kind of do that where they kind of appear to be out of it or they have one off lift and then they just completely do a 180 and
Right.
change everything with just a final performance on the medley. So
There's a couple of things I just want to mention. So this, when you get into the 90 kg and then all the remaining men's classes. So this was the last part of the contest.
Mhm.
This was late Saturday. We were back in the little room. So 90, 100, and 110. We had a 5-hour break. The supers men's were just coming over. 2 things. So this weekend was the first time we used a different carabiner attachment. You know how spinning was an issue at at the Olympia, and that was, it's spinning, but for the most part, people aren't trying to make it spin. It's just that's what's happening, and it made the judging a little challenging. So Andrew from Nemesis Grips, he said, "Oh, why don't you just use one of these double independent spinning? I don't know what they're called,
like a swivel. It's like a swivel, basically, right?
Yeah.
Like a double swivel."
Yeah. So so he mentioned that to Zach Ebel, and then they tested it out, and they're like, "Holy, I can't even spin it if I wanted to make it spin."
Yeah.
So he got in touch with Ricardo. Ricardo tried it out. He says, "Yeah, let's do it." So I think it was great for Armlifting USA because of the no spin rule. It just took the spinning right out of the equation. The judges didn't have to worry about it. It goes up, you lock it out, you're good to go. So that was a huge plus, I think, for that contest. The other thing I want to mention is I don't know how the hilts felt in that room on day 1, Jen, but on day 2, there was something about the conditions in that room that the third pin, especially the third pin, which was a great pin that we used at the Olympia, very grippy, but it's almost as if there was too much chop. To me, it felt horrible. And in fact, none of the graph of the clocks felt good to me. So before we started the 90 kg class, I spoke to the different competitors and said, "What do you guys think? I almost think we should not use this on the third pin." And people tried it out and they're like, "Yeah, let's switch it up." So we took that pin completely out, and we were basically using 3 new pins. I mean, we had a few minutes to get them seasoned, but I would say all men on that day 2, there maybe is an exception, but I feel everyone underperformed on that event. Maybe it's part of the 5 hours, maybe, but to me, it just didn't feel grippy. I could not get comfortable as compared to at home or at the Olympia. So it surprised people. And you probably noticed some of the people in these classes that are about to come, getting only 1 rep or failing on the 3rd rep. Strong people that we know have lifted this before. So it made for some surprises, I felt. I can't complain. We're all using the same pins. We're all in the same conditions. Jen, what did you feel? Did you notice any difference from the Olympia to the Arnolds for that event for you?
Well, for myself, I just think, I guess when you have the nylon for that country crush. So I just knew it was going to be difficult. And that's where I was a little bit of a princess at Mr. Olympia. I was like, I'm wiping every single one of those little nylon, rollers off. And that's where I think was it the timing. Who knows if that little bit of a break, but I'm glad with the vertical bar and especially the third one, the grandfather clock, pardon me, that it felt nice because at home, that's where I was having a little bit of a different, that I did not get to the double digits.
Okay.
So that's where, to me, it was nice. But when you think about it, some of the guys, I think my thermostat's broken. I like to be warm, but most of the guys were sitting out the outside of the door just because it was so hot. There was no
hot,
ventilation. Yeah. So then who knows if there's that little bit of humidity to maybe different on the chalk. So those handles is a possibility. But like I said, I really felt for you guys of having that 5-hour break. I know Matt Marino didn't appreciate the double swivel.
Oh, he didn't like it?
That pit, he did not like it. So he was a bit frustrated. Yeah, there was not pretty words coming out of his mouth. I think there was a lot of frustration. And so who knows, but I think taking the spin out, I thought it was very fair because how like Sarah Saffel is, she was not having a good time at Mr. Olympia because the rules. Because I know Sarah always beats me, especially in King Kong, and very close competitor that just I felt she had some unfair calls at Mr. Olympia, but that's water under the bridge. It is what it is. Whole new competition. That I think that was a better way of implement for the rogue grandfather clock to have it. I'm a fan, but again, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one.
Well,
I like the event. I just felt it didn't. To me, it didn't feel grippy. It didn't feel good that night. So whatever it was, but I definitely liked the event.
Eric, I don't remember if you, or I don't know if you'll know this, but Matt Marino at the Olympia, he had one of the better vertical bar lifts.
Yeah.
For like our class, so he really performed good there. So I was kind of expecting that to be a really good event for him.
Right.
Because at one point in time, I mean, I was thinking about, competing in this class before I realized I wasn't going to be going. And I was thinking like, man, like who's good at what, for these events. And that was one thing I was thinking was, man, Matt Marino's, at the Olympia, when I saw in person, I was like, man, really good. So it really surprises me to only see him pull one rep on the third pin when I know how strong he was. Like he outlifted me a lot, at the Olympia on that lift. So I could definitely see, different texture, different day, different stuff. The vertical lifts or friction lifts get kind of weird like that. And then one last thing before we go into the classes here, since we're kind of on this medley talk with the stuff not feeling right, did you guys lift after the like 125s and the super heavies?
No, they were last.
They were last. Okay. I wasn't sure if you guys got to it afterwards because I know that I spoke with Jason Denji and he had mentioned that I think like one of the grandfather clocks, the V-bars had gotten like blood on it.
Yeah,
so then
we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we get to his class.
So then
I feel he got unlucky there. So
okay, so I just had heard that, so I wasn't sure. Like, oh well, maybe if you guys went later, maybe you guys got like a newer one that had been swapped out or something. So I was just double checking on that. But no problem there. So
we'll see. What was funny, I was going to send Poncho, Grip Sport Latino, my rogue grandfather clock because I seem to keep on collecting. It's like the same stuff but different manufacturers. And I was going to send him one. And I said, I even said to Eric, do you want to use this one? But I mean, it just probably didn't have proper seasoning. I mean, it had some chalk, but it was not my favored one to get seasoned. But then again, Eric, you're very professional. Again, ambassador to the sport of just saying, hey, it's not my meat. Do you want to speak to the meat director? And I thought, oh God, we don't need to have drama at last second. So I think Eric did like, do you want to speak to Ricardo? But just seemed a bit tense. I'm like, I think I'll just back away from this. I tried to be helpful, but let's just not mix it up. Let's, not put shit in chocolate cake or something, not spoil everybody else. So I left it alone.
That's one of the good things though about, I don't know, when something's kind of like noticed like that, like when you get some of the experienced lifters around, if everybody can kind of come together and agree like, hey, man, that doesn't feel right. We need to fix this, right? Common sense kind of takes over. And I feel like that's at least one good thing when if you're at least communicating with others about it. For the most part, I think it's usually a positive. No one's usually fighting it too hard.
That's what worried me is that when I was just warming up, I noticed right away that especially that last pin didn't feel good. So I didn't want to just unilaterally say I'm changing the pin. So I involved everyone who was about to lift, and then everyone's like, "Sure, if you think so, let's do it." I just wanted it to be, it's not just me switching the pin for me, So as long as everyone's on board,
Good for you. I'm glad you took that initiative, but like I said, I was like, oh, I have one, but I was like, no, let's not meddle, as they'd say in England.
So if we bump up, going to the 100 kg class, and that's 220 pounds for anybody that's listening and I don't know, just sucks at kilo conversions and stuff like that. Because I know I'm not the greatest at it. With the weight classes, I'm really good, but when it comes to random numbers, I get bad again.
Or is it was the X raw powerlifting. They were like in freedom units. And I just thought, oh yes, we're definitely in America to like talking in pounds. So you can say freedom units. You heard it here on the Grip Show.
So Eric, this is a class that Well, you won last year, but the year before you were at 90, correct?
Right.
So,
Right.
so technically you were like the 90 kg champ to 100 kg last year. And
Right.
then this year you ended up taking second place. Do you just want to kind of walk us through, kind of like Jenn did with her weight class, just walk us through maybe your assessment of the guys you were lifting with and just kind of
Sure.
break down how things were unfolding and kind of what you were thinking about and just give us your
Yeah.
perspective.
So last year, Ivan took second in my class, I believe. He tied me last year on the one hand raptor, which really surprised me at that time because all I knew he was a monster at grippers.
Yeah.
So when he tied me last year on the one hand rolling handle, which is my specialty, I'm like, oh, okay. This is interesting. And I think what limited him last year for the Saxon and the axle is just his back. Like he told me his back wasn't developed enough yet. Then I had supper this year. I had supper with him the night before the contest, and he said, "Yeah, he's been really training deadlifting last, 3 or 4 months. Really good. He's a lot stronger." And he was telling me his goal numbers for the years to come, and they were really ambitious. And I was like, "Oh wow!" And then I knew as well that I stepped up my deadlift training over the last few months. I felt last year my axle results were subpar from previous years. And I think it was just a back issue. So now I've really been focusing. So I knew I was coming in strong to this contest. And it made for a really exciting battle. The whole class, the 6 guys, they were all super strong. The axle, the first event, 5 of us lifted 400 or more. I mean, that's that's a competitive field.
Oh, no,
when
for
5
sure.
of us are lifting 400 on the axle. Ivan and I, we both nailed 196.5, so it's about 433, and we agreed let's just stop there, let's tie and see what happens in the next event. But like Cliff Keener, who we now know from the Arnolds and from the Olympia, he had the second best, or I guess third best result, 189. These are big numbers, so it was really exciting to kick off the event. And that was on the strength stage. We had, hundreds, if not thousands of people, all the women in the front row, I know Jenn and everyone was in the front row cheering us on. I noticed that. I thought it was really cool. And we're also running at the same time as the 90s and the one hand. So they're all running together. And if you look at if we maybe talk about this at the same time, Simon and Zach got 191.5, so they're over 420 as well. So there's so everyone's like, I was expecting people to start dropping out once we get 360, 370, 380, but everyone was staying in. So it was a very, very exciting first event. Simon, I recognized Simon's name from King Kong results. I knew he was good, but I was used to seeing him in a heavier weight class. He really cut down. I think he lost like 30 pounds or something in a matter of a couple of months to make the 242s. So he was, to me, he was a big surprise. Very, very strong guy. We get to the Saxon. Saxon was, I felt really good. I was getting close. I got 114 last year. I think I got 115. Just the way they were doing the increments, it was a little different. By the time we got to 114, there was still me, Ivan, and Simon. We were neck and neck in the Saxon. And then I almost got the 116.5, lifted it a bit crooked, and then I didn't have time, I couldn't recover. So I failed there. And Ivan and Simon got good lockouts on 116.5. I can't remember if Ivan stopped there, but I know Simon tried the next one, and he almost got 119, so it was close.
Wow.
So very, very strong pinch lifts. I mean, these are big numbers.
That kind of threw me off. I don't say threw me off, but I was impressed to see the 3-inch Saxons from that weight class in particular going up, 250 plus.
Yeah.
That was pretty serious. Eric, you said you lifted 114. What do you know what that comes out to in pounds?
251. That
has to be a PR for you, right?
I got 253 twice before at Armlifting Worlds 2 years ago. I got 253. Okay. I was right around my PR
okay.
level.
Because I knew that you had done like a 242, or you had done some other lifts maybe that I had seen. But for Saxon, I kind of thought that like you were more around like 230s, 240s. So when I was like, man, him and Yvonne went like head to head, like damn near 260. I was like, that's insane. So
Yeah.
okay.
No, it was very exciting, and just both those classes were very, very stacked. Almost everyone, all but one competitor, got over 200. So it's it's a strong field. It was really fun to lift with all those guys. And then after the 5-hour break, and we went to the little room for the third event. The guy who impressed me the most was the guy in my class, was the guy who did the best, was Jake Fuller. I think he's from South Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina lifter. Yep.
Yeah. So I know he's sort of been in and out of the sport. You see him at a contest, and you don't see him. But so he was a surprise. I didn't really recognize him at the Arnolds, but he got third. So he was a strong. His training's been going well, and he got 14 reps on that third pin. So congrats to him. So we were going as you know how these medleys are run, they go in reverse order of standing. So I was the second last to go. I only managed 10. The pin didn't feel good to me. I felt like, I felt that I underperformed. Like I said, I think most people felt that way. Matt Marino, he kicked it off, and he got 1 rep on that third pin, and you could tell that he was like, what the hell's going on? Like, it was weird. And then Ivan, he got to 11, and he realized he knew it was a done deal at that point. He was about to stop, but then I think he was cheered on into getting at least 1 more rep, so he got another one in. But yeah, congrats to Ivan. It's just scary for the rest of us because he's
like 21 years old as well, right?
He's
Another
21.
Yeah,
he beat me in this contest, which doesn't feature grippers, and I am nowhere near him on grippers. So the future looks bright for Ivan he only weighed 209, so he can do 93s if he wants in grip sport. So he said his focus for the next few months is to do the number 4 cert. Yeah, that's where he's putting his attention on. So congrats to him. It was a great performance.
Yeah, like I said, this is not to disrespect any of the other classes, but 100 might have been, for the 100 men's, that might have been about the most stacked class as far as just like, I don't know, when I go from like top to bottom and what everybody's lifting.
Very competitive, very deep field, yeah.
There's just not many people that are really falling off anywhere. I mean, I know like we talked about Matt only doing 1 rep on that pin, but like I know how strong he is at that lift. So maybe some different off weights or some bad couple bad lifts on Saxon or something that maybe some people had, but like I said, I don't know. It's just one of those lists, and maybe I pay attention to that class a little bit because it's kind of around where I compete sometimes. So I'm just very familiar with all those people and have competed against most of them, so I kind of know where they stand. Really tough class. And then if we, I guess, yeah. So I don't want to mess up the last name because I've even asked him how to say his name before, but I believe it's Shuk, Yvonne Shuk. And then obviously you, Eric, in second, and then Jake Fuller took third for the 100 class just to finalize that. And then you mentioned, come on.
Jason was fun. Matt Cow was fun because he got a really good, I think he got his 400 axle and he did a dab to the crowd. It was
okay. Well, and it looked like he was wearing some of his usual getup.
Yeah.
Yes, our rodeo clown. I think that's it. I would say the Arnold's just somebody wearing cow print, and of course, then it was cool. Like he gave people a photo of him and cow. So personalized photo. So he really took it. No, he was quite the something different at the Arnold's.
But yeah, he said that, I mean, like the Arnold, usually people are like signing photos, the celebrities are signing their stuff and passing it out. And he was like, I got these, I'm going to sign them and give them to other people. It's like, that's a good idea. So I had talked to him about that. I thought that was pretty funny. So I'm glad he actually followed through.
It was appreciated because I don't normally get these types of gifts, but it was cool to get a personalized photo like that. fun.
Definitely. No, and that's the thing. Watching you guys that day was really fun. And of course, Simon making, what we did in Sweden to then finally come over here. So yeah, Simon, what I really like about him when he has a challenge, he goes to it doing, what was it, circus dumbbell pings. Like he's doing the hammer, like the circus hammer, kind of like 1,000 swings. So Simon, it must have gotten to his head that I'm going to just win the Arnold. So whatever he did, he just goes into a trance and then just gets it done.
Huh.
So
yeah, because he won all 3 events.
Yep.
Or he tied Zach and him tied on the axle. So Zach was worried about his back has been bothering him. He said Zach told me that every single deadlift he did was painful.
Oh no!
But it didn't prevent him from getting over 420 on the axle. So he had a great axle day. And I think he sort of got what he was expecting on the Saxon and Rogue. He got second best, but I mean, the GSC got second best. But once again, the pin was surprising me. But almost everyone got the 3rd pin in those groups, but it wasn't the case in the heavier classes. That's what we're going to get to.
Okay.
But Justin Nurple, it was my first time meeting him. I recognized his name from
a lot of different competitions. I've seen his name all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah. So nice guy. Was happy to meet him. Also see Nick Spencer again. He was always in a good mood, and it was just a very fun group in these classes.
Yeah, Nick's been doing pretty well. Also, I mean, kind of hitting these podiums at these bigger competitions and stuff. So. Yeah, so for that top 3, Simon Stewart, Zach Ebel, and then Nick Spencer. But yeah, Nick has been kind of right there. And really, I mean, like obviously, like Jen said, Simon came in and kind of took over or had a goal in mind and just, went after it. And but Zach has been really performing. Really, I don't know, Eric, and I mean, you know him better than I do, but it almost seemed like at Heavy Hands, when you guys came down for that competition, it almost seemed like, yes, Zach was strong. Yes, Zach had a good grip, but it was almost like Heavy Hands was almost like this like breakout moment where he like jumped a couple notches and it was like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. This is a guy that I think a lot of people were sitting around like, I could hang with Zach Ebel. I could do this. I could do that. And then like when he lifted that day, it was kind of like, oh, he's on another level now. And it seems it seems like he's kept that progress going. So
he's about 2 years in now, and he's enjoyed a lot of success. It's great. The group we have here in Ottawa is we really have a good solid group now that we travel together, and it's a lot of fun to go to these contests with people like that. But I'm so happy for him.
So yeah, another tough weight class there for the 110s wrapping up, and then we just have the 125s and the 125 plus. So we got basically our 2 biggest classes or 2 heaviest classes to round out everything. Did you want to kind of get into how this went down? I'm sure most people were probably watching the bigger weight classes, right? I assume most people were probably sitting around, and I'll say it's usually like one of the main draws, but that usually seems to be when everybody's kind of, if they're not lifting, they're usually paying attention to the biggest lifts of the day type stuff.
Well, Alexi getting things going, he had a 500 axle. So a 500 axle, and it looked easy. Like, I think he stopped there. I don't remember if he tried more, but the 500 looked solid. Like there was no, Alexi, he holds it and he looks at the crowd. So you know that he got that lift. So he won all 3 events. Not a big surprise. He's always the favorite in any class he enters. The big surprise to me was Tim Connors. I think he was at the Arnold 2 years ago.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. I think he lifted in the same class, and I think then it was like maybe Ode won that class that year.
Okay.
But okay. I remember watching Tim lift there, and then I'd seen like I think he had like some type of shoulder surgery or something from then till now that he had been working on, but then I had been seeing him lift like big Atlas stones and getting back to training. And I didn't expect to necessarily see him doing a an arm lifting competition, but I could tell that he was back into training. And I know that like his pinch grip is insane. Not to say that he's not strong at other stuff. He's strong all around, but
Yeah.
I know that his pinch grip is almost off the charts. Like he's got some freakish strength. So yeah, surprising that I'm surprised to see his name on the list, but once you realize that he was competing, I'm not surprised to see him at the top by any means. So
Yeah. Well, it was a surprise to me because I didn't remember his caliber, but for him to get second in that class, you know that he's he's doing well. And Jalen was just behind him in every single event, just behind him on the axle, the Saxon, and the PFC. And those were then there's a big jump to fourth place in the points. But if you see, fourth and fifth came down to body weight. They had the exact same score they tied on all three events. They did the exact same weight on the axle, exact same weight on the Saxon.
Yeah, so that'd be Mike Saffel and Lee Janota.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Lee gets the fourth position because he was slightly 10 pounds lighter. But
I'm gonna have to get on Mike. I'm gonna have to tell Mike he's got to cut weight so in case these ties pop up, he's got to win the body weight battle.
Yeah. But there was a lot of other so I guess newer competitors in this class. Oh, Marcus, who's the organizer of the big Swedish comp.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there was sort of a scheduling change, and I guess he missed it. So he actually missed the axle. That's why he has a 0.
Gotcha.
So that's unfortunate for him. But look at the numbers. See, 3 guys got 1 rep on the first pin, and 1 got no rep. So the weights, I can't remember what the weights were set at, but I know that they were heavier than the lighter weight classes.
Yeah.
But it goes to show you just how difficult that third event was for a lot of people.
Yeah, because really, I mean, only the top 3 guys. I mean, the top 3 repped the third pin, but other than that, it was single reps at the second pin or below.
Right.
So, yeah, pretty tough for that weight class there. Then, at least for that event. So, yeah. So that would bring our top 3 there to Alexei Tukalov, Tim Connors, and then Jalen Worley, rounding out the 125s. So another solid class, like I said, with a lot of good lifters. But man, it's like you see how close some of the other stuff is, but like in a 3-event lineup like that against someone like Alexei, when you just have that much ground on axle, it almost digs a hole that you almost can't climb back out of that hole.
Yeah.
Just because the percentages of what Saxon's going to be. I mean, you'd have like, are you going to outlift the next guy by 100 pounds on Saxon to make up for it? Like it's not enough. You know what I mean? So when you get someone like that just has such a dominant axle, that being the first event like that, you can really bury somebody right out of the gate. And like I said, some of the other stuff was, Alexei still won the other stuff, but it was relatively closer. But yeah, that's almost like the nail in the coffin, like before anything, even like when he hits 500 or something, it's like, as long as he just shows up to the next 2 events and just remotely does well, he should be okay. Now move it to the super heavies. And we see the return of Carl Meyersko. So trying to remember now.
Olympia 2022.
That's when he got the records. Yeah,
exactly. That's where I haven't seen him really lift in a long time. So it just felt like it was good to have him back.
And he did lift the Arnold last year was where him and Kim Johansson went head to head, right?
Right.
So that was the last we see him. So just seeing Carl return, because he didn't do the Olympia. I know I had talked to him, and he had like a tricep injury at one point in time. He was doing he certified on the number 4. He did the GHP 10. I had talked to him, had him on the show and stuff like that. So knew that Carl was training again and doing things. I just wasn't sure if he was going to make that return trip out there for the Arnold. And it was awesome to see that. So Carl ended up taking first place with that. Now, it doesn't look like they lifted as heavy as they did the year before. Do you think that's just because that's all he needed to win, so he kind of called it, as opposed to running it up?
I don't think. I think he's just not at that level that he was a year or a year and a half ago on these specific lifts for the many
Okay.
reasons you just said. I think
Okay.
it was more than enough to win the contest.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's as strong as he was at the Arnold's last year, for example, where he lifted close to 550 or whatever it was on the
Yeah.
axle. So
Gotcha.
still more than enough to win. Still, I think he got 518 in pounds. But so I think it's just a combination of all the factors. He showed up strong enough to win, but not enough to get PRs in every event.
And then
Luke's,
yep.
I think he also lifted a bit less in the axle than he did last year. I think last year, did he get 500 or he got close to 500? I can't remember, but
I think he lifted just over 500
Okay.
last year. I don't want to say it was like 506 or something. Don't quote me on that, anybody.
Right.
But I do believe that Luke Reynolds, because I think he took third last year. It was Kim Johansson, Carl, and then
Right.
Luke
I think
Reynolds.
so. Yeah.
And I believe Luke dropped out just over 500. And then Kim and Carl kind of
Right,
continued
kept
their
going.
battle on
Yeah.
another 4 or 5 rounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm almost 100% certain it was over 500. I just don't know how much. 506, 508. It was something in that ballpark. I hope is accurate.
Right.
But
so he was still, I mean, he still got 210, which is 260, 264. So that's still 464. So it's still a very strong axle, maybe a little less than what he was expecting. So he after the two first events, he was in 4th place. But he really did well on the GFC. He got 5 reps, which maybe to him, he didn't realize just how good that was. It was very good because the only person to lift more was Carl, who got 2 extra reps. So 5 reps on, I can't remember what the weight was at, but heavy enough. But it was really fun. He climbed from 4th place all the way up to finish 2nd in the class. So that was a great to see him pull that off. Some big guys like Eric Dawson, I think he was the biggest guy in the class, close to 400 pounds.
Well, and I was looking at Eric's Saxon. I mean, he was 5 kilos off of Carl.
Yeah.
Right there. So I mean, and then I mean, and then
so he was Jason, 2nd place after the first 2 events.
Yeah, and then Jason Dingy right there too with a 125 on Saxon. So I mean, you're talking, what is it, 275 pounds?
Something like that, yeah.
So you're talking about really between Jason Dingy, Eric Dawson, and Carl, those are 3 guys that just lifted over 275 on a 3-inch Saxon. Yeah. Now for Carl, that might not be much, or some of those guys might hit more in training as well, but to do it in competition, it's not often we see 3 people go 275 plus all in the same competition. So that's just another indicator that, like, I don't know, everybody's getting a little bit stronger, or they're dialing it in a little bit better for competitions. But those numbers are really good to see.
Just for the numbers on the Rogue grandfather clock. So the last one, it ends up being 85 kilos or 187 pounds.
For which class?
So that's for the men's 110, 125, and 125 plus in kilos. So the pins, so 65, 75 kilos and 85. But the last pin.
That's too light. Right.
It's more than that. It's more than that.
It had to be like 220 or something. I mean, it had to be like 100 kilos, right?
It's definitely more than that. Maybe you're looking at the amateurs, maybe.
You're right. Okay, I beg your pardon. So 80. So for the last, so the men's 125, 85 kilos, 95, and 105.
Okay, so
105. So close to 230. 105 is 231.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 231. Sorry.
On a slippery handle. So it was.
That's tough.
It was Excalibur, basically, when you say when it's a slippery thing, and that you're like, heave ho, like you can't do that. That's almost like trying to drag the Titanic's anchor at that point. No way.
So the story for this class, this was the last few guys of the day, and Dave Labbe was in 5th place going into the medley, and he goes through it, and he gets, starts bleeding. His hand, a blister or something happens. He starts bleeding. So he said, we have to. He tells Ricardo, I got blood on the handle, and Ricardo right away says, "Oh, let's just switch it." So he switched because we had 4 grandfather clocks. So he took that pin off and replaced it with the one that was extra grippy that we had removed from the contest. That's the one they ended up putting for the third weight. And then the first guy up was Jason. So Jason was in third place. And then he barely got one rep on that third pin. And you can tell that he was frustrated by the turn of events. I mean, it's no one's fault. I mean, that's, something.
Should have just left the blood on there and just rubbed the chalk into it. And just maybe that would have helped it.
Maybe. But so I'm happy he got that one because he had to work for that one rep. It wasn't coming up. Like he finally got it, because that would have been a difference between finishing in, fifth and maybe seventh or something. It would have been maybe even further. So he did got that one rep, but he ended up in fifth place. And saying Eric was in second place going in, and then he finished in fourth. So really the last few guys had trouble. But Luke and Carl were able to do it, and they're the ones who finished 1 and 2. So in the end, it was a very exciting final event.
And then it's good to see. Okay, I would say it's good to see Dave back too, because Dave taking third place. Dave had competed 2 years ago, but I think he wasn't in last year's Arnold. It would have been interesting to see Dave mix it up with Luke Reynolds, Kim Johansson. It would have been interesting to see all 4 of those guys mix it up when last year. But Dave won the
grip event at the Shot Classic last summer. The blob run and the
he won both. Yeah, he won both events. Yeah,
right.
He won the bells and the blob event. I talked to Dave. I was going to try to get him on the show at some point, right around the time he had just won that. And scheduling wise, we'll get it figured out, and it just hasn't developed yet. But I've intended on talking to Dave for some time, so hopefully I can get in touch with him in the future. And like I said, everybody that we're talking about at some point in time, I probably plan on talking to. But Dave's been around for a long time and performed at a really high level, so it was just good to see him.
And it's nice to see him, because he only competes in grip maybe once or twice a year, but it's nice to see him come out and he's a great for the crowd to see that type of guy. I mean, he's so impressive, So it's fun to see him compete.
Yeah, so really a stacked super heavy. And then you were getting ready to mention something about Jesse Pignonen, right?
Yeah, so I was cool that he made the trip. If you look at the scores, he was the axle still, like, all of these guys are getting really. It's hard in this field when there's that many guys who are lifting more than 440 on the axle.
Yeah,
his axle was strong, just maybe not strong enough compared to the top guys. And his Saxon was still 115. That's 253. Oh, sorry, I was looking wrong. 200. So he got 440, but there just happened to be 5 other guys who also got 440 or more. So it was hard to finish them on the podium in this particular class. And then he also struggled on the grandfather clock. He wasn't able to get the third weight.
Yeah, because he's usually one of those guys I feel like, and I don't know what his training's been looking like or what else he's been doing, but he's one of those guys that usually is he's up there when it comes to different feats of strength or when it comes to grip. I mean, he's always a contender. So to see him, I don't want to say so far down the list, but yeah, I kind of am used to seeing his name up a little bit higher. But then when you look at every name that's above him and what they lifted and what they did, you're just like, I don't think that it's really any fault of his. It's just the fact that, like, the competition's just that steep.
Yeah.
And he's been really working on strongman. That's what he's been saying to me. And that's the thing. I hadn't seen him since after the pandemic. The last time I saw him was 2019 when he held the Country Crush Championships at his place in December. So I made the trip out there, and kind of his it's a massive shed, like an industrial unit. You can have a boat there and whatever, and where he works out, it's an awesome place to go. And but he's like me, he's sick and tired of buying the same stuff, different manufacturer. But it's the same thing, whatever. But it was good to see him. But just again, he's really focusing on a strongman at the moment. But he did get a few finish national record for, I thought it was the axle.
Okay.
That's where I remember that Ricardo tried to make the point. But yeah, no, I'm just glad to see that Gessie again came to Columbus.
Yeah. So then that, like I said, that pretty much for the super heavies would round out to Carl Meyersko, Luke Reynolds in second, and then Dave LaBay in third. And then, like I said, there's still, I mean, so many guys just under that that are always top competitors and top notch. So, uh, seems like one of the best years as far as the presentation, the stage, the lifts being done, the roster of people that showed up. Um, any kind of, I guess, closing thoughts on some of that, or I don't know, just anything after we've kind of covered all the data.
Well, one thing is I didn't stay at all for Sunday, so I can't speak to anyone who competed in the open
For
class.
the opens, yeah.
I know if I look just at the guys who finished at the top, Jason Cooper, who won the super heavyweight class, you know, an axle of 201.5, 110.5 on the Saxon, and 16 reps on the GFC. So, you know, clearly a guy who could compete even if next year, if he goes into the open, I think he'll be right in the mix if he's already putting those types of numbers up. So it's fun to see.
Yeah, and they split this very similar to how they split the Masters, kind of, right? They had a couple different things.
Yeah,
kind of breaking them up by
100
weight.
kilo, and yeah, the split was 100. Yeah.
So Jason Cooper won that for the I guess the 125 plus, or for whatever the weight cutoff was. Yeah. And then second place, it looks like behind him was Landon, and I don't know how to pronounce the last name. It's Efird. Efford, Landon Efford. Real quick, just a funny story. Like, I don't want to ramble on you guys, but funny story. I don't know where he's from. I want to say he's from Virginia. Don't quote me on that, but it might be from North Carolina where I'm at. But I ran into Landon at a unsanctioned grip competition here, and it was the first one he had ever done. And he's into strongman, so he's a big like strongman type competitor. And we had set up a really big medley, and for this competition, it's just unsanctioned. So a couple of like homemade devices that a local guy that welds and makes stuff had created, and then we had this big medley that I contributed a lot of items to. And one of the items was the inch dumbbell, and James Rederitas was refereeing and stuff. So, like I said, it was just a North Carolina competition, but Landon was there, and they had broken it into like novice and then open class. And he's just a, big strong man. He doesn't know it's his first grip competition. So the guy's like, I'd never done anything like this before, so I just thought I was a novice. And I watched him go to the inch dumbbell during his medley, pick up one of the smaller inch bells, and so he's like straddling the smaller inch dumbbell, and he just leaned over like 2 feet, like not in position, didn't center, didn't set up on it. He just leaned over like 2 feet and just picked the inch dumbbell up like without any struggle, and just like set it back down. Didn't even know what the inch dumbbell was, I don't think. Just thought it was a big heavy thing, just lifted it like nothing. And I looked at James and I was like, they might want to redefine what they like classify as novice, because like this dude just launched the thing. And I want to say that was one of my first when I had first started. So like I don't even think I had lifted the inch dumbbell yet. And I saw him just yank it off the floor, and I was just like, this dude's in the novice class? Come on, man. But he just didn't know. They're like, yeah, man, he holds like this big farmer's walk record or something for strongman. So I recognized that name just strictly from that event. So I had run into him. So for being in the open class, it's cool to see him a couple years later, I guess, still, competing or kind of branching over from strongman to do that stuff. We can get into some other names here. One name I'm actually gonna mention too is for I don't know if they separated, 100 kilo and under or whatever that cutoff was, but Hunter Heath, I know, took first for, I guess, like whatever the middleweight would have been for the men's. And the only reason I bring up Hunter Heath is because he's from North Carolina. He's about 2 hours away from me. And he had just messaged me one day on YouTube and was like, hey, something about grip, and I just happened to like recognize the to comment, you know what I mean? But it was like posted on some of my videos. And then I think I got like a friend request, but I'm like one of those people like on Facebook, if you like friend request me and I have no idea who you are, I'm just like delete. I don't know you. Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, like I delete, I get this like friend request. I'm like, who's this dude? What? Delete, whatever. Don't know. Then I started thinking and I'm like, why does that name sound familiar? And I was like, oh man, that's the dude that was commenting on the YouTube channel. Oh, he was talking about lifting. Oh, let me go find him. So I had to go back and find him and like, oh, hey man, like what's up? Because he had reached me on one platform and then like requested me on the other. And I had him come through, lift at my garage with me and just test like the inch dumbbell and like blobs and different things. Like first time he ever touched him, and he lifted really well. So I knew he had real good potential. And then he'd done a lot of competitions in Charlotte, kind of getting ready. So I've stayed in touch with him. So it's cool to see somebody that completely randomly just messaged me off of seeing videos online, had no idea that he lived 2 hours away. And then him kind of, bouncing ideas back and forth with me about training, and then to see him follow through and go all the way up to Columbus and then perform well, which I figured he would do pretty good. And I told him I figured he'd probably be right up there for his weight class or whatever it was. And to see him deliver was a good thing. But yeah, that's just kind of, I guess, how the grip world's kind of weird and kind of small, where I had somebody that like totally just reached out based on a YouTube video. And then next thing you know, like you've trained with them or you're bouncing training ideas back, and then you're seeing them go to competitions and perform and stuff like that. So it, I don't know. Had he not commented on YouTube or had that conversation, I don't know, maybe he wouldn't even be competing. But I think that's important for like, for all of us, how we talk about, Eric, you've talked about building a lot of rock climbers and different people up in your area, kind of having a crew. And then Jenn, I know you talking about, kind of representing for the women and getting it bigger for them, but then just you're traveling, from the US suite, you're doing all this other stuff as well. So I just think that's a good thing in the sport when we get people like that, I don't know, you don't know what they're going to turn into or how good they're going to actually get, because they message you and it's like, it could be like, oh, who's this person? It's like, I don't know. That might be the next, star of the sport, or might be the next freak that's just doing all these crazy lifts, because I've seen it happen in the last 2 or 3 years, seen it happen quite a bit, really. Just people kind of reaching out on a whim, trying to figure out what the sport's about. And if you give them a little bit of attention and time and explain it to them, they take off with it and they actually start performing pretty well. So sorry to ramble on that one, but just wanted to give us some background details on a couple of those names I recognized in the open class.
The positives of the internet. That's what you just showed us right there. That it's like, guess what? If someone talks to you, build that dream. It's the fields of dreams all over it. If you build it, they will come. And that's exactly what happened. So
yeah, so this is one of those few positives of the internet. The rest of it's like 95% negative, and I got to hide out and get away from people because it's about to get ugly. But this is one where it worked out.
Yes.
But no, yeah, definitely some positives from just like I said, reaching out to people, and that's the thing for I don't want to go on get on like my high horse or something, but if there are newer people that are reaching out or trying to get started and doing stuff like this, I mean, all the experienced people kind of know each other, or to some extent have some kind of interaction, whether it be competing, messaging, whatever it is. I just think if we want to see the sport continue to grow and get better and really kind of see the potential that's out there, it's important to kind of just not get too big of a head. Like, we're still in a very, very small pond, and there's so much like untapped potential out there that when you get some of these people that are reaching out to you, don't think that just because like, oh, well, I don't know, I meddled in this, or I've been doing this, or I've been doing it this long. Like, don't necessarily get too cocky, or I don't know, just too big of a head about it. Just if you kind of stay down to earth and branch out to more people, it's really better for the sport. And it's actually going to kind of long-term, I think, build things up. But it is very easy to be in the sport early. It's still kind of smaller in some areas. You get a little bit of like local or regional success, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh man, I'm one of the best in the world. And it's like, well, let's keep building it. You know what I mean? I don't want to talk in circles about it, but yeah, I just, for the most part, I just want people to kind of stay humble. And if newer people are reaching out, educate them on the sport, help them out. And you might be, I don't know, it might be somebody like Yvonne in the 100 kilo class. Like, oh, he's good at grippers. And it's like, yeah, that dude might break everybody's records in 3 years. I don't know. Like, it's just interesting to see where people can, where people can actually end up. But if you stay closed off and you think you're like too good to talk to people or you're above people, not only are you going to get to miss out on maybe pushing yourself or training and meeting new people, you might kill it for someone else that could have been really good in the sport too. So little bit off track, but like I said, dealing with the open class, I mean, all these open lifters, there's so many on here. They all had to find out about it from somebody, whether it was online, whether it was in a competition in person. So to me, I think that's just a good representation that whoever those people are that are kind of, bringing them up or bringing them on, really kind of falls on the veteran lifters or the people that are promoting and stuff like that. But it's good to see, because if you had an open class and there was like 5 people there, then you'd be like, man, what are you guys doing when you're hosting, or what are you doing when you're talking to people in general? Like, why is no one showing up? But when you see people like this, I guess it gives a lot of hope for the growth of the sport and everything like that. So anything to add? Like I said, sorry I went on a tangent, but
I would just say Ricardo, he's doing a great job. This is so much work that he puts into these events. He's traveling all over doing these arm lifting clinics, and that's how he's introducing a lot of these people to the sport. So I just want to really thank Ricardo, because what he's giving us the opportunity to compete in these venues and these events, it's fantastic. So thank you, Ricardo.
And I don't know how long we've been going. It's been almost 2 hours, but I hope if Ricardo tunes in, I don't know if he does, but hopefully he sticks around long enough to hear the compliment. Yeah.
Absolutely. Even being on the stage at the Arnolds, I never thought that would happen. Yeah, strong woman always takes a big footprint, but I think just having arm lifting a smaller imprint and being excited about it, I agree. Just Ricardo has it done a fantastic job, and then how just even he's trying to set the goal up for the Super Series to have more venues. So it's out there. So he's being that plow horse, and then just getting the seeds and just making sure that just have a good crop to make sure that we churn out more lifters. And it doesn't just become this niche sport that's around for 15, 20 years and dies off. But then again, Eric, you're doing a good job with your kids of doing youth class for King Kong. So that's where you're doing your bit too. So thank you to you as well.
Thank you.
All right. So with that being said, any final thoughts, or does that pretty much wrap up the Arnold 2024 recap? Good to go?
I'm good. Looking forward to next year.
Well, hey, I thank both you guys for coming on and helping me out with this and taking the time to do the research, and just congrats to both of you for, making the podium in your weight classes and competing as well. So yeah, I couldn't do the show if I didn't have you guys, on the ground floor competing to tell me what was happening, because I wasn't even there. So thanks for, doing all the, let's say, background work, groundwork, whatever you want to call it, and then also performing well as lifters, and then taking the time with me to kind of browse over all these different results and get it out to the people. You know what I mean? Because like I said, I'm pretty sure people are going to be interested for this one. It's always it's always one of the biggest events of the year. So I know some people are looking forward to it, and the show's been a little stagnant lately. So thanks to both of you for kind of getting me back up and getting me back rolling. So maybe we'll get the Grip Show back on a steady schedule again, and we won't have as big of a layoff in between episodes.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Zach.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yep. Thanks, Eric. And thanks, Jen. Look forward to lifting with you guys or seeing you some other time, whether it be a show or in a competition. So yeah,
absolutely. Keep me in the loop for North Carolina. I actually have some friends there, so maybe it might work out of either visit, do a grip comp, and go from there.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, no problem. It is like funny how like the grip world is so small and people can have like connections almost everywhere, it seems. But yeah, no, for sure. And I still got to hash out some details with Ben, because I don't know where the status of heavy hands is right now, but that would be a Virginia or North Carolina competition. But other than that, I personally don't have any idea when I would be competing again, or where it would even be at this point. So right now I'm going to probably try to keep the show up and running for everybody. keep training some feats and see where these competitions end up. I know there's the North Americans, Eric, and we'll talk about that another day or something. But yeah, like I said, a lot of good upcoming competitions and stuff. And I guess last thing right before I go is Eric, do you have a competition that you're looking forward to next?
Well, next for me is nationals in 4 weeks in Calgary, so that's my next focus.
Okay. And then Jen, you
Good
got a
luck,
competition
Eric.
you're eyeing?
Yeah, so I'm running Gods of Grip May 12th in my neck of the woods. So it's probably going to be at the local boot camp gym. And just I bring my own weights because at least I already have it weighed out.
Mhm.
So there's that going on. And then randomly, my corporation is sponsoring the Olympics in 2024, and so I'm actually going to Paris to compete in sitting volleyball.
Oh, wow.
So it's a little bit crazy. And then I've talked my friends into doing the World Mini Golf Championships down in Hastings the second weekend in June. So there's craziness going on, but I just like to keep it interesting and fun. But
Very
no,
cool.
thanks. Yes, yeah. Thank you for the well wishes, Zach, on yeah, the Arnolds. It was fun to see everybody again. Who knows? And then Eric, we'll see about Canada. Tammy and Sarah are keeping a bug in my ear, but just need to see about budgeting.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, we'll go ahead and wrap up the episode. And once again, thank you guys for taking the time and helping me out with this.
No
All right, no
problem.
problem.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.